The Australian Financial Review.
Just how long should someone be in a job before they apply for another one?
I've been doing my current role for 4 years and I'm still learning things. Others would say that that's too long and Tim, you should look to do something different, and maybe that's true. But I think 6 months, 12 months, you're really only just starting to scratch the surface in that role.
Welcome to 15 Minutes with the Boss, a podcast about success, failure, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Sally Patton, and my guest today is Tim Helyar, the country head for State Street in Australia, a global financial services firm with $88 trillion of assets, either under custody or management. Now, Tim, before I start the clock, I'm curious. When you were in high school, did you always want to get into financial services?
I think the short answer to that is no. I'm the son of a farmer. So I grew up in a farming family in central west New South Wales. You know, finance was not necessarily the direction I was heading. The expectation would have been that I would come back to the farm.
Which you didn't do, clearly.
Correct. I came to Sydney, went to University of New South Wales. Very, very different to where I was from. You know, having only come to Sydney maybe once or twice a year for sport, prior to that, it was a big difference for me. And, you know, you fall in love with Sydney. It's a wonderful city. There's so much to do, even back then in the 90s, leading into the Olympics, and then finish university and the Olympics starts. And why would you want to be anywhere else?
Now, Tim, we've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to start the clock right now. And my first question is about your morning routine. What time do you get up? Do you drink coffee? And are you one of these people who runs a marathon before breakfast?
That is not me, but I'm probably on the more active end of the scale. So I typically wake up when my body wakes me up. Particularly in summer, it's probably closer to 5:30 than it is 6:30. What do I do then? Typically, I'll have a coffee. I don't go too far without having a coffee. And exercise is very important. So I like to swim in the ocean. I like to run, probably less so as the knees and the hips start to tell me that's not a good idea. And I also go to the gym. So I try to, get decent exercise in maybe 4 mornings a week.
Why is exercise in the morning important for you?
I think it gets your brain working. Frankly, it gets rid of the cobwebs as you wake up and you get out of your slumber. So I feel refreshed. And I know the days when I haven't done it too. And
do you do breakfast?
Yeah. I have to have breakfast. If I don't have breakfast, again, I don't think that's a very good way to start the day without that. Food is fuel for your body and fuel for your brain.
And what is breakfast?
Typically, it's either toast or a smoothie. I like a protein smoothie. Very rarely, such as this morning, I'll have a bacon and egg roll just as a treat.
Oh, that does sound rather delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, my next question is about your career. Was there a pivotal moment in your career, for example, a promotion, a new project that you took on that changed the trajectory of what you were doing?
For sure, Sally. I moved to London relatively early in my career. So I was 4 years into my career and I moved with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. So I was working for an asset manager in Sydney, looking out over our service providers. So the back office and the custody part of the business, which is what I do today, interestingly. And when I moved to London, I started to work for JP Morgan. It was a different job. So the first job that I got over there was in projects. So I'd never done projects before. I'd never been a business analyst or a project manager. And the first thing that they asked me to do is to run a large work stream in a very large project, which I figured out how to do. It was fairly daunting. But the thing that came next was what I would call pivotal. I was given a project director role or a program director role running a $100 million piece of work.
So what did you learn about project management at the time?
What did I learn? Incredibly detailed. So I'm a detailed person and you need to understand so many different aspects of the project, whether it's the technology components or the operational overlay to that. So I learned, a very comprehensive set of skills. I also learned a lot about communication because being a lead in large programs of work, you end up talking to a lot of senior executives. And as a result of that, you get very good and very comfortable dealing with senior management who are very invested. But the skill set that I'd learned there, the pace at which you have to run and the product suite that you get to learn gave me a really good horizontal view, of large asset management businesses in particular.
So how important has learning how to run fast been for the rest of your career?
Very. I've always worked for large American banks or fund managers, and there is not much that you do other than run fast and run hard. You build so much resiliency by learning how to do that. There's not a lot of downtime, and there's not really time to contemplate too many other things, which is why it's important to have the right people in the right roles, so that if you're not thinking about it, somebody else is. So, running fast is, I would say, a par for the course type situation when you work for an American bank. And that resilience that you build up, I've used that all the way through my career. In fact, I find it quite hard to lie on the couch or relax outside of work, because it's difficult to do anything and know another pace.
So my next question is about career advice. Mm-hmm. What is the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
It probably came from one of my flatmates at university, actually. So it's not exactly career advice, but it's very relevant. His line was, don't sweat the small stuff. And I think that that's extremely relevant, regardless of what role you're in. You need to keep the eye on the bigger picture and the broad detail as opposed to the minutiae. I think people that do get tangled up in the minutiae, they get stuck in either their day or their job or even their career.
But interesting in your case, because on the one hand, you really love detail, but on the other hand, you're trying not to sweat the small stuff. So how do you personally get the balance right between those two things?
Yeah, well, it probably comes to another thing that I think I do quite well. I'm very decisive and I trust my instinct a lot. I'll make quick decisions and I'll go in a certain direction, not afraid to turn around and come back and go in a different direction if I get enough evidence to say that was a bad call. You can work out what is the small stuff and what is the inconsequential detail, and you move on from that pretty quickly. I was also given another really interesting bit of advice from a consultant right back in probably my first or my second role, which was a good decision on a Monday is better than a perfect decision on a Friday. If you make a good decision on a Monday, you've got all week, figuratively speaking, to execute a plan. If you spend all of your week analysing and it's 3:00 on a Friday, you've got no time left to actually execute. So you might make a perfect decision, but you've got no time left to execute it. So it's not a good decision.
Okay, so the better decisions are always the ones made earlier?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, not every time, of course. Sometimes you make a rash decision and maybe you're not in a great frame of mind. Maybe you haven't had your morning coffee. So, you've got to be prepared to assess and constantly assess decisions. And you've got to be prepared to listen to people around you as well. And oftentimes I see people don't listen. Sometimes I'm guilty of not listening because I think I'm right. But once you have a few experiences, I suppose, you do get your head around when you've made bad decisions and also back yourself when you've made good ones.
All right, Tim, we are going to take a short break. And when we come back, you pick the questions. I'll see you soon. Welcome back to 15 Minutes with the Boss. I'm here with Tim Helyar, the country head of global financial services firm State Street. Now, Tim, in front of you is a box with about 20 random questions inside. For the time we have left, I'm going to ask you to pick them out one by one. Let's get started.
Sounds good.
Who is a leader, business or otherwise, whom you really admire and why?
I'm very pleased you asked me this question because I'm going to give you a sporting leader who I think is a fantastic leader, and that is Pat Cummins, the captain of the Australian cricket team.
Yes.
So I'm a mad cricket fan. Mm-hmm. Pat Cummins is, I think, a very special cricketer, but I also think he's a very special human and leader. He's a very principled guy. He's also, the first bowler that's been a captain of the Australian cricket team. And people always say you can't have a bowler as captain because they've got too much of a workload and too much responsibility. But I think he's done an absolutely brilliant job as captain of Australia. And I think a lot of it, particularly with the history of the Australia cricket team over the last, say, 10 years, he's brought a new culture to the team, and he's done that in a way that is not necessarily typical of the way Aussie cricket teams have run over the last few years. And as a leader, you do respect the past, obviously, but as a leader, you also want to set a new direction. And I have a huge amount of admiration for Pat in terms of how he has set a culture for the team, set a culture for how we should think about Australian cricketers and how we want our kids to grow up playing the game. And I think he's a fantastic role model.
I love that. Have another fish in the box.
Okay.
What are some no-nos when applying for a job?
People often make the mistake of applying for a job because of the title of the job. So the officer title, the level of that job. And oftentimes they do that because, senior level jobs or the next level job doesn't necessarily come up in the time frame that people want it to. So people will often apply for roles that may be inappropriate for them.
For which they are clearly not ready?
They're either clearly not ready or it's not really in their field of expertise. I see that a lot, actually, people trying to do a massive jump sideways and up just because it's a more senior role. So I would say don't chase the promotion. I would say chase the role that is right for you. And if that happens to come with a promotion, then absolutely. The other thing I struggle with a little bit at the moment is when people are wanting to change jobs every 6 to 12 months. I really struggle with that concept. I'm a very loyal person. I've been with my employers for extended periods of time over my career. And maybe that's because I want to get really good at my job. But I don't see how you can get good at a job in 6 months. I've been doing my current role for 4 years, and I'm still learning things 4 years in. Others would say that that's too long, and Tim, you should look to do something different, and maybe that's true. But I think 6 months, 12 months, you're really only just starting to scratch the surface in that role.
So would you be disinclined to give somebody an interview who's only been in their current role for, say, 6 to 12 months? And I take your point about learning.
Yeah. Look, it's a red flag when you see their CV and they've had 14 jobs in 20 years. Or for someone early on in their career, they've had 5 jobs in 5 years. It begs the obvious question, why did you leave? And why are all of these jobs, potentially not linked or significantly different? My favorite interview question is, where do you want to be in 3 years' time and 5 years' time? It's surprising the number of people that can't answer that question very well.
What would you say is an appropriate amount of time to spend in a particular role?
Look, I think after 12 months, you are scratching the surface, as I said. But after 2 to 3 years, I think you can get to a point where you've mostly mastered a role. You feel very comfortable coming into work each day. You know how to handle the challenges that come your way. You are providing value add to your team and to your clients, ideally. That really only develops, I think, after 2 to 3 years in a role. And I think that's an opportunity then to look laterally or above and say, what is the next logical step for me?
Okay, that's good advice. 2 to 3 years.
I think so, yeah.
Have another fish in the box. What does AI mean for your business? So are you at the point where you're using AI to fundamentally change some of your business models, or are you more at the point where it's more of a tool for individual productivity enhancement?
So, good question. I mean, AI is fundamentally transformational for our business. We see it that way. Long time we've thought it's been potentially transformational, but now we know it is transformational. And the reason I say that is we are largely an operational business. So the lion's share of what we do, 80+% of our revenue comes from a servicing business. And that is powered by technology and operations staff. So we have over 50,000 employees globally, and over 30,000 of them do an operational role. And what AI can do is very quickly and very easily, once you've built it, trust it, test it, all of those good things, what it can do is substantially reduce, the number of operational staff that you need to do any particular task, because you can automate it. That is also very important for us because it takes risk out of our business. And as an operational business, our biggest risk is making an error, and the consequence that comes from that is often a financial consequence. So, taking human eyes and human hands out of certain jobs where it makes sense, and AI is massive behind that, particularly agentic AI, that will be transformational for our business. And we are just at the beginning of going beyond the personal productivity use of AI. That's been embedded for a while, but now moving into how do we use that to significantly transform the way we operate, that's where we're going next. And that's exciting.
Okay, have another fish in the box. Where and when do you have your best ideas?
So always in the morning, because that's when your brain is at its most powerful, you're fully charged. I find that swimming is fantastic because you've got very few distractions when you're swimming in a pool or in the ocean. You've just got your head down and you're paddling away. So exercise or driving, it's when you typically are on your own and you've got time.
So I'm interested in what you said about your brain being very active in the morning.
Yeah.
Do you think about that in terms of the way you structure your day?
Yes.
So how do you think about that, and how do you structure your day to make maximum use of your brain activity in the morning?
Yes. So I once had an executive coach who taught me the concept of cognitive credits. When you wake up in the morning, you have maximum cognitive credits, and they only go down from there through the course of the day. Food helps, coffee helps, but you still only start with 100 and you end with whatever you end with. So you only go backwards throughout the course of the day. When you have maximum cognitive credits at your disposal, when you have maximum focus, is always, for me, in the morning. It's not for everyone. Some people are night people. But my cognitive credits are always at their most powerful in the morning. And I'm not sure my team like this, but I run all of my meetings in the morning. often run them on a Monday, because you then back to the good decisions on Monday versus perfect on Friday, you get set up for the day or for the week. And I find that you make poor decisions when you're tired. Again, very well accepted and understood. But a lot of people fall into the trap of just pushing, working late, and you are nowhere near as productive.
So what types of work would you reserve for the afternoon when you have got fewer credits left?
So email. So getting through email as a leader, a lot of what you need to get on top of is what people are telling you or asking you. So there's a lot of reading. The other thing I do is, quite a few one-to-ones with staff. So something that's a little bit lighter and is a little bit, easier on the brain, because you can still have a good conversation when you've got 40% battery left. But, it's a little bit easier than doing something that requires either deep analysis or maybe a great presentation or a really important client engagement.
Yeah, interesting.
Sometimes you don't get to dictate those things though, right? So sometimes you need to save up as much as you can and prepare your mind and your body as best you can for a 3:00 meeting.
Okay, but it's very good advice. So I love the way you structure your day. On that note, Tim, you have passed with flying colours the Chatterbox section. I'm now going to ask you one last question, and that is, if you weren't doing your current role, what would you be doing?
Yeah, so everyone has to have a plan B. My plan B would be a passion project, which is property development. So I love property. I've built a number of properties or renovated a number of properties over my time. My wife and I have a real passion for it. Mine is probably quite deep. And I just love the concept of building things, because a lot of what we do in financial services is behind a computer screen or it's across a meeting table. So when you're building something and you can see a brick being added to a wall or a door going in or a roof being put on, it's extremely satisfying. And that plays to the background that I have, coming from a rural area and farming background. I mean, I really enjoy it. And I think it really ticks a lot of boxes for me and for my family.
Well, I wish you all the best should you ever revert to your plan B and pursue property development. But for now, Tim, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for allowing us to spend 15 minutes with the boss.
Thank you, Sally.
And thank you to everyone for listening. If you like the podcast and you want to hear more, consider sharing the podcast or writing a review, as it helps us to reach more people. And follow us wherever you get your podcasts. At the Financial Review, we investigate the big stories about markets, business and power. For more, go to afr.com, and you can subscribe to the Financial Review, the daily habit of successful people, at afr.com/subscribe. This podcast was hosted by me, Sally Patton, produced and edited by Mandy Coulin and Iona Rennie. Head of audio is Alex Gow, and our executive producer is Fiona Buffini. See you next week.
The Australian Financial Review.